Chapter 10. Secret known only by Jesus and Judas. Jesus knew who was going to betray him. Jesus said that those who already bathed needed only to wash their feet, as they were clean, though not all of them. Jesus knew who was going to betray him. Amongst the disciples, Jesus referred to Judas. All were clean except for him, because the devil put into Judas the thought to sell Jesus. Thought inside of Judas was not perfect. So Jesus was telling him to wash this. As stated in John 6:64, if Jesus knew from the first who was the one that would betray him, then this work was not something Judas could do in any way that he wanted. It was work that moved from inside God's plan. Judas was simply used for that work. Peter was used according to Peter, and Judas was used according to Judas. We only know Judas as the person who sold Jesus, but spiritually, lustful thought inside me is Judas. This refers to Satan, who enters through thought. When Jesus said the disciples were clean, but not all of them, Jesus was talking about Judas. Jesus also said that they needed to wash only their feet because feet are not clean, so they must wash them every day. We must wash our lustful thoughts with the Word every day. Why do we need to receive God's Word every day? In Revelation 22:14, God tells us to wash our robes with the Word every day. This means that we must throw away our humanly attachments and greed. Jesus, who knew the person that was going to betray him, knows all things about us. So no matter who it is, one moves from inside God's plan. Secret known only by Jesus and Judas. Jesus said in John 13:26, "It is the one to whom I give this piece of bread when I have dipped it in the dish." So when he had dipped the piece of bread, he gave it to Judas, son of Simon Iscariot. Jesus said that the one to whom he would give the dipped piece of bread is the one who will sell Jesus. Jesus said, "It is he," because Jesus already knew. After Jesus said that the one who receives the bread would be the one who betrays him, Jesus dipped a piece of bread and gave it to Judas. Would Judas have accepted it if such work were not already planned ahead of time, and if he hadn't already known? He would never have accepted it. Jesus had just said that the one who receives the bread would be the one who betrays. So how could Judas accept the bread? Jesus had just said that the one who receives the bread would be the one who betrays. So how could Judas accept the bread? Nevertheless, the reason he accepted is that he knew he was the person who could do the work of selling Jesus. And so Judas moved according to God's plan, and the greatest of deep secrets was known only by Jesus and Judas. Jesus is condemned. Though Jesus performed many miraculous signs before the Jewish people, they did not believe Jesus was the Messiah. That they didn't believe was so that the prophet Isaiah's words could be fulfilled. Isaiah 6:9-10 says, "Keep listening, but do not comprehend. Keep looking, but do not understand. Make the mind of this people dull, and stop their ears and shut their eyes, so that they may not look with their eyes and listen with their ears and comprehend with their minds and turn and be healed." That Isaiah said this was Isaiah referring to Jesus having seen Jesus' glory. God's glory inside of Jesus is truth. That the prophet Isaiah's prophesied word became fulfilled is glory. That Jesus appeared according to the prophesied word is glory. Jesus came to this earth as the Messiah for whom the Jewish people waited, but they saw Jesus not as the Son of God, but son of the human Joseph, and they condemned Jesus, and they nailed Jesus to the cross. Jesus is the glory of God, but they, whose eyes were covered and could not see Jesus as glory, condemned Jesus. However, the fact that Jesus was condemned is also work contained inside God's plan. For 6,000 years, God made all of his plans appear through humans, and God has come to this era having fulfilled one era after another. Jesus knew all things that he would suffer. Because Jesus knew that Judas would bring the officers to the garden, Jesus went to face them. Already knowing that he would be arrested, Jesus went to fulfill the Bible. Jesus moved, already knowing God's entire plan, so God's movement itself was the fulfillment of the Bible. Jesus did not do any one thing voluntarily, but moved only according to God's plan. Jesus was going the path of the cross to save the sinner and lead lives into God's embrace. During the Holy Communion, Jesus said to Judas, "Do quickly what you are going to do." And Jesus sent him away. Jesus went to the garden because it was God's plan, which was to be fulfilled through Judas. One part of that plan was already permitted to Judas. This was work inside of the plan. So the soldiers, chief priests, the Pharisees and officers had come to capture Jesus. If we see with our human eyes, it may seem like the men who had come to capture Jesus were sinners. But from Jesus' perspective, they are tools who are used to fulfill God's plan. Because God's entire plan is righteous. Characters in the 66 books of the Bible are people adhered to God's righteousness. Until now, we had judged and divided the characters in the Bible with human eyes. But the Bible is not something humans can judge and divide. God is one person, and the plan of 6,000 years inside the Bible is all God, so we cannot divide God. And Jesus went on fulfilling God's plan, knowing all the things that he would suffer. Of those whom you gave me, I have lost none. It says in John 18:8, "Let these men go." Jesus tells the men who came to arrest him to take himself away, but not put their hands on his disciples. One can feel from inside such word the love of Jesus, who protects the disciples. Jesus protected the disciples who were entrusted to him until the end. That Jesus did not lose even one of those who were entrusted to him is God's plan, and at the same time, God's word to fulfill the Bible. Of the 12 disciples given to Jesus by God, Jesus did not lose even one of them. When we see, it may seem like Judas, the betrayer, got lost. But from Jesus' point of view, he is someone who was loyal to God's work and a person who opened the path of the cross. Judas worked in front of the Jewish people, and Jesus worked in front of the disciples. This work was adhered to both sides in order to fulfill God's entire covenant. Here, there was not anyone who worked according to his own will. But Judas killed himself and suffered ridicule and criticism. His name has been buried until now. Although his name is buried, Jesus did not lose any one of those who were given to him. Now, in the era of love, such buried name will resurrect.